Welcome to episode 101 of the show with no name. I'm your humble host, Nick, and today we're going to be exploring another old farmer cemetery out here near Davenport, Washington. This cemetery goes by the name of the Pleasant View Cemetery. Let's get into this. This cemetery is located north of Davenport in what was once an old town that went by the name of Mondovi. And now I would consider this area more of a unincorporated community than a town. It's not quite a town, but it's not quite a ghost town. There's hardly anybody living around here now. I believe at one time this cemetery was even called the Mondovi Cemetery. The name Mondovi was chosen in 1881 by a man named Elihu Gifford when a post office was established. 3 years earlier, in May of 1878, Gifford had traveled overland in a wagon train to Spokane with about 40 others from the village of Mondovi, Wisconsin. He would later move to this new settlement in Lincoln County that he founded for just a little while before he moved on to other things. Elihu was known as a scholarly man, and it has been said that he also played a huge role in the naming of the village of Mondovi in Wisconsin, which he was previously from. He got the name Mondovi in honor of a town in northwest Italy where the French General Napoleon defeated Sardinian forces on April 22nd, 1796. And it was kind of a tribute to that, if you will. And this is what he looked like. He was a very fierce pioneer and traveler. Richard Ashton Hutchinson was born on February 14, 1853, in Claiborne County, Mississippi. In 1886, he'd be appointed by the general government to take charge of the mills and the general stores in Nez Pelham and manage Chief Joseph and his band of Nez Perces, then prisoners of war. He remained an efficient official, remaining there until July 1st, 1889. He would pass away on July 19th, 1921, at the age of 68. His obituary reads, "Spokane will not soon forget Dick Hutchinson, pioneer." Richard Ashton Hutchinson was a successful farmer, the owner of huge tracts of land, a capitalist, a politician who won in many a contest, a lawmaker who held a seat in the Senate at Olympia for nearly 20 years. But not in these roles will he be best remembered. It will be as Dick Hutchinson, the pioneer, a man with a pioneer's grit, a pioneer's optimism, a pioneer's cheerfulness and humor, whether in days of luck or days of fire and panic and drought. A pioneer's sound belief that all men are equal, a pioneer's firm faith in the future of the rich new district he chose for his home. He saw Spokane grow from a tiny, isolated village of a dozen families to a beautiful city of more than 100,000 people. He saw Washington change from a lonely frontier territory to a great, prosperous, wonderful state. And he had his share in the building of the town and the Commonwealth, and looked forward to the greater Spokane and the greater Washington which he knew was yet to come. To have been a true Spokane pioneer, to have helped in the building of such a state and such a city, is that not record enough for any man? This is Richard's father, Dean William Hutchinson, and he immigrated here from Kentucky, and he passed away in 1884 at the age of 86. And this is his headstone right here. This is the headstone of Richard's brother and Dean's other son, William Henry. He was one of the first settlers of the Inland Empire here, and his first wife, Mary, whom he's buried next to, unfortunately passed away of typhoid pneumonia on June 7th, 1903, at the young age of 42. I'm now going to talk about a man who went by the name of John Hugo Aaronson. And he was born on September 1st, 1891 in Sweden. He became a Montana governor, immigrating to the United States in 1911. He established an oil rigging business in Montana and discovered an oil field in Toole County in 1922. Which became the state's richest natural gas and oil fields. He also had a successful trucking business advertised as the Galloping Swede. Entering politics, he was an alderman of the Cut Bank City Council from 1934 to 1938. He was also a member of the Montana State House of Representatives in 1938, and he was a member of the Montana State Senate in 1944. In 1953, he was elected as a Republican to the 14th governor of Montana, serving until 1961. While he was in office, the state forestry office was reconstructed. A gasoline tax was initiated, which funded the highway department. Prison reform programs were instituted, and a legislative council was founded. After completing his final term, he remained active in Republican politics until his death at the age of 86. At first, I couldn't figure out why he was buried here, because he passed away in Montana. He didn't seem to have much to do here. And then I realized that his wife, Rose, was from Mondovi, and she was buried here, and he wanted to be buried next to her. Rose McClure Aronson was born in 1904 in Mondovi, Washington. She attended the Davenport schools and graduated from college in Cheney. After teaching in Davenport for a number of years, she went to Montana, where she was superintendent of schools in Glacier for a while. While there, she married Hugo Aronson, who was later elected governor of the state of Montana for 2 terms. I also want to talk about a very interesting family that lived in the Mondovi area back in the day, and they were the Smith family. I'm going to start with Mary Jane Smith. She was born on June 13, 1871, in Clarksville, Missouri. Coming west with her folks in a covered wagon in 1884, they settled at Spokane Falls. In 1887, she was married to her husband, George Smith, in Spokane, and they set up a homestead near Mondovi. He died in 1952, and she resided at their farmhouse until 1960. George Edward Smith, her husband, was born in Ohio on August 26, 1862, and he was a resident of the Davenport Mondovi community since 1887. He would pass away in 1952 at the age of 89 years old, having resided in the area for 65 plus years. They would have 4 children together during their marriage: Grace, Pearl, Mary, and Harry. And one of their daughters specifically lived an interesting life, her and her husband, and that's what I'm about to get into here pretty quick. Here are some pictures of George and Mary Smith together right here. And here's George Smith again. And this is a picture of George, Mary, and their 4 children. And here's their headstone at the cemetery. This is one of their daughters, Mary Smith Stevens. And this is Mary and her husband, George Stevens. And I'm going to talk about this couple specifically now because they both had very interesting but short, tragic lives. Mrs. Grace May Smith Stevens died at her late home 7 miles north of Mondovi Thursday, July 9th, after a sickness of only 36 hours duration. The deceased was born May 26, 1888, and on January 16, 1905, was joined in wedlock to George Stevens. The union was blessed with 2 children, a son and daughter, who with the father, parents, and many friends are left to mourn her untimely death. Her husband, George James Stevens, was born on October 26, 1882, in Worth County, Missouri. And he would pass away on August 7, 1910, at the age of 27 in Reardon, Lincoln County, Washington. He was murdered. A newspaper article that talked about the murder was titled, "Blow Breaks Neck of Reardon Man. Stevens Falls Dead in Arms of Friend and Posse Nabs Assailant." Reardon, Washington, August 2nd. His neck broken by the force of 3 blows on the head. George Stevens today fell dead in the arms of a friend. His assailant, Fred Wheeler, not knowing that his blows had been fatal, fled, but was soon afterward captured, making no resistance. The tragedy, which occurred in a saloon here shortly after 6 o'clock this evening, was the outcome of a quarrel, the cause of which is not definitively known. The attack was sudden and furious. Before anyone could interfere to stop the fight, the deadly blow had been struck. Though it is not believed there was murderous intent on the part of Wheeler. Stevens had been a resident of Reardon for about 12 years and was about 27 years old. Wheeler had been in the city about 3 or 4 years. When Wheeler saw his opponent fall, he ran out of the saloon, and as soon as it was realized by the others present that Stevens was dead, pursuit had begun. Wheeler was easily caught, making practically little effort to escape. The sheriff was at once notified and is taking Wheeler to Davenport. The body of Stevens is also being taken to Davenport. Their daughter's name was Mildred Ellen Stevens, and their son's name was Vernon Lee Stevens. Mildred would end up getting married to a man named Romney Eugene Rouse, and they would have 3 children together. Vernon would end up getting married to a woman whose name was Ethel Bell Plews, and I don't think they had any children together. Vernon would pass away in his 50s, so Ethel ended up remarrying to somebody else, and that's why she isn't buried in this cemetery as well. She's buried with her second husband. I'm glad that Vernon and Mildred were able to grow up and live pretty reasonably successful lives in spite of all the extra hardship that was thrown at them. I couldn't imagine losing both my parents so early like that. I'm not sure what actually happened to them when they were kids. Did they stay with their grandparents, or how did they get raised after they lost both of their parents so tragically like this? That's one of the things I love about these old farmer cemeteries out here in the middle of nowhere. It's just one family plot has such a big story to tell. Here are a couple newspaper clippings from Grace and George's deaths. This is Mildred's headstone, And this is Mildred and her husband and 3 children. And this is Vernon and his wife. And last but definitely not least, I want to talk about a woman whose name was Melba Amelia Alt. She was a loving mother, grandmother, and a friend to many. She passed away on June 12th after a difficult battle with Alzheimer's disease. She was born on August 9th, 1944 in Spokane, Washington. Melba was always known for her independence and her pride for being a registered Spokane Indian. Raising her 2 sons on her own has always been her proudest moment. Everyone who knew her realized that little Vicky was her one true love, and Elvis Presley was a close second. Whether it was twirling a flaming baton, beauty school, Davenport farming secretary, bank teller, Hanford patrol officer, bus driver, or DSHS social worker, Melba always gave 110% to her career endeavors. She even graduated from a semi-truck driving school in Arizona. She loved her pets, cigs, and her Seattle Seahawks. And I bet she was an interesting person to know. I hope you enjoy the rest of the videos of this awesome cemetery out here in the middle of nowhere that goes by the Pleasant View Cemetery. Thank you.